Hello and welcome to Sportuccino. I'm Richard Parr, and guess what? I'm not by myself. I'm joined here by Dean Kilford. Dean, welcome to Sportuccino. Great to have you on the programme this morning.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me into the studio.
Dean, one of the very few people to ever be in Sportuccino HQ. I think you're the
last.
last.
I feel privileged, actually. I feel very privileged.
You're the last person since Yellow Tap Tennis.
Wow.
Well, check that app out. A little plug for you there. Not that I have anything to do with Yellow Tap Tennis, but anyway, welcome to Fact or Fiction. Yes, every single Monday we discuss the biggest stories in sport, mainly the Premier League, but anything else of major note. We're going to be talking a little bit about Spanish football today. We're also going to be talking about the Ashes cricket. Lots to cover today, Dean. Okay. Where were you this weekend in the world of sport?
I was watching the mighty Tottenham take on West Brom in a very thrilling, very dull, one-sided, one-all draw, but that's football, unfortunately. So, yes, I was there to see Harry Kane equalise. Although West Brom, to be fair, under Gary Megson, they did well.
We'll come on to that in a short moment, Dean. Of course, all of our topics on Fact or Fiction today have been released already on our Twitter page, @Sportuccino. Dean's already voted. If you haven't already, get on that Twitter page. We would love to hear from you. And, of course, if you've got any comments to make, we are here live on Periscope, we're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, we're live on Sportuccino.com, we're live absolutely everywhere. If you're listening to this back as a podcast, sorry, we're not live, but never mind, we are on iTunes and on Stitcher. All right, it's time to play Fact or Fiction. We're going to start talking about Arsenal's 1-0 victory over Burnley. It was a late penalty from Alexis Sanchez, and we are saying Arsenal shouldn't have been awarded a penalty against Burnley. Fact or fiction, Dean?
Unfortunately, it pains me to say fiction. If you're going to put two hands and push an opponent, it's a free kick anywhere on the pitch. In a penalty area, although he did disguise it well, because the first angle I saw, he looked like he was going for a diving header. But he clearly, two hands in the back of Ramsey, pushed him to the floor. It may be soft, but it's a penalty.
Oh, so you are saying fiction.
Fiction. Yeah, it should have been a penalty.
I'm saying fact. There was a bit of a touch, but it was at such speed. When you're marking someone, I'm not sure you can kind of be here doing that. I think your hands
if you start pushing someone.
No, but I think it was done with such speed. I'm not quite so sure it was a penalty. To be fair, is the referee looking for it? Why is the referee looking there, not at the ball? Could he have clearly have seen that, or is that going to be in the corner of his eye? I'm not so sure. It's a tough one, but I'm gonna say fact. It was a penalty. Burnley fans will probably completely disagree with me, and I can.
You're saying fact it shouldn't have been a penalty.
Am I getting
confused?
Yes. Yeah, no, Burnley
You're
fans,
agreeing with Burnley fans.
Burnley fans might love me. Arsenal fans might disagree with me. I'm getting so you don't trust anything I say. I get confused what I say. But, yeah, it was a good win for Arsenal. Obviously on the back of that North London derby victory, which you probably tried to completely forget, Dean.
I have tried to put it out of my mind.
What have you made of Arsenal in recent weeks? Do you think they can break into the top four by the end of the season?
Top four, definitely. I think consistently, they're always consistent. And they haven't dropped as many points or looked as lethargic as they have done in previous campaigns. Particularly this time of year is normally when they struggle. They normally have a flying start and then you see them struggle through the Christmas months. It's almost been reversed. They've had the troubles with Sanchez and Ozil, which will come up again in January, I'm sure. If those two remain at the club throughout that period and they let them go for free, I reckon they'll be in the Champions League places.
No Ozil yesterday.
No, but he's proving influential. He's starting to get involved in games where at the start of the season it would be fair to say he was peripheral, to say the least.
He was excellent in the North London derby.
Yes, he was.
Not that you're trying to remember that one. So what do you think? Let us know on the Facebook page or on YouTube. What do you think? Arsenal shouldn't have been awarded a penalty against Burnley. Fact or fiction? We would love to hear from you on YouTube or on Facebook or at Sportuccino.com. All right, let's move on. Let's see what's next on our poll. We have just been talking about Arsenal, and our next topic is about Everton. Everton lost 4-1 to Southampton, and we are saying Everton are in crisis. Fact or fiction, Dean?
Fact. I think if you're You've conceded 9 goals in 3 days, 5-1 at home to Atlanta in the Europa League.
Atalanta,
sorry. Yeah, they weren't playing anyone from the States.
They've got an amazing stadium in Atlanta.
Right.
We spoke about that on Sportuccino only a few days ago.
That's
John
obviously
Rhodes.
what was in my mind.
Good little plug there. Don't forget to check that out. Sport Technology Awards interview at sportuccino.com. Atlanta United, but Atalanta from Italy. Yes.
And then I think Everton stayed in the game. Sigurdsson's stunning strike, keeping them up half time. But Southampton were on top. Even in that stage, and you only felt it was a matter of time. And the problem is, they've got a team of new players that have come together, 7 new signings, expensively assembled, but there's no team. And with the Unsworth it doesn't seem to have that galvanising quality to bring them all together, which is what you expect if you're going to have someone in that interim period. They've got to be able to at least get the troops together. They might not play, tactically astute, but you want them all to play for the shirt. That's clearly not happening. They concede a goal, heads drop, and then Southampton could have had 6 or 7, and it wouldn't have been. It would have been a fair result, I think.
It's
sad.
Part of the problem, though, has been that they've signed too many players in similar positions. Klassen, Sigurdsson,
15
Rooney.
number 10s, I think. Something ridiculous. Rooney.
And I don't think it's helped that defensively they keep mucking about with a 3 at the back, a 4 at the back. They can't decide on that best formation. It's not a very good spell for them. And I think crucially, you look at Everton and West Ham, and I think I don't think it is a crisis. I'm going to say fiction because I think crisis is too strong of a word. David Unsworth has said something similar. He said they're in a tough position, or he thinks they're in a tough position. Trust me, David, you're in a tough position.
Yes.
You don't need to think about it. You're in a tough position. Crisis is when a club's going out of business. A crisis is a club that are dropping down the leagues. That for me is a crisis. This is a really poor run. They need to improve. They need to do better. But crucially, they've got the tools to do it. They just need to work out how to bring it together. And I think that's the most frustrating thing about an Everton and about West Ham is they've spent so much money. They've spent money on some good players. Sigurdsson is a good player. I was quite impressed with Vlasic when I saw him play against Brighton. They're lacking a striker. Sandro hasn't really been it. Rooney's a good player, but is he a number 9? Is he replacing Lukaku? He isn't really. So there's a bit of a frustration there. But they're a much better side than where they're placed at the moment. They should be minimum.
Got better players, but again, it comes down to that team. If I use Bournemouth as an analogy, so Bournemouth got up into the Premier League and have been a stable Premier League seed based upon their team. That they didn't really change too much from going up. So players in the positions. Did they have the best players in the league? Probably not. But
I'll be honest, I don't think I can still name some of their players.
But they've added 3 or 4 or 5 new faces in the summer that are now in and around the first team, and you've seen them struggle because to build that teamwork, if you play a certain way, for me, that's where teams struggle. You only need to change. If you've got something that works for you, don't tinker with it too much. Just add in a few key elements, just to slowly improve it, to get people adapted, to get 5, 7 players. That's over half your team that's brand new.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
So it does.
And I think
it's a famous musical quote, I think, somewhere.
And I think it's something that Brighton have done very well this season as well.
Brilliantly.
And we'll touch on Brighton in a little while. So Everton are in crisis, just remind me. Fact. I'm going to say fiction, more for the terminology. I agree with Unsworth, they're in a tough position. But crisis, I think that comes down to a bit of semantics. All right, let's move on to our next topic. And we briefly mentioned Spurs drawing 1-1 with West Brom on this programme last week. We just got the news that Tony Pulis had been sacked by West Bromwich Albion. Gary Megson is in temporary charge. He got that 1-1 draw. So our statement today is Gary Megson should be given the West Brom job full time. Fact or fiction, Dean?
Fiction.
Okay, why?
They got a result on Saturday, and it's one of those ones, from anyone other than a West Brom fan, you're going to be frustrated. And actually, it was a type of performance that West Brom fans were annoyed at Pulis about before he got sacked. They were so defensive, sat back, got the early goal, wasting time from minute 15, which was just the craziest thing. But, fair play, they've got their point. I think that's just that reaction that you get after. I don't think he's a full-time successor. You look at his records for Bolton, not great. Was he in charge of Derby as well, Gary Megson? Not sure.
He was in charge of West Brom.
Certainly, he was in charge of West Brom before. Didn't do too well there. It did. It's again, you have that.
It's relative.
It's relative. Well. By all accounts, the lock-on is Alan Pardew going in as manager. Now, whether that's a good thing, but in terms of statement, no. I think he got a good result, but I don't think that's. I think if they hadn't got that first goal, which I know you talk in hindsight, they wouldn't have come away with anything.
I think the thing to consider is Megson is part of the Pulis setup from the last 2 seasons or so, and I don't think he necessarily brought any fresh ideas to this side. And if you're not going to bring any fresh ideas, why do you get rid of Pulis? That doesn't make any sense to me. And I made this point on last week's show with Andrew Rayburn. I said, what do West Brom ultimately want to achieve? Are they looking to break into the top 6 and get a European place? I don't even think they believe they should or could be doing that. Are they looking to stay in the Premier League? Yes. Is Tony Pulis a man who will keep teams in the Premier League? Yes. Do you need to give someone like Pulis a little bit more time? Of course you do. And ultimately, where do you need to finish at the end of the season? 17th. Would Pulis get them to 17th? Of course he would.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
So why get rid of him? Yes, they're annoyed about the style. Yes, perhaps they want something a bit more exciting. But change that in the summer then. Don't change that now.
Well,
bring a manager who can bring his own players and create his own ethos to a team. Albeit that didn't really work for Frank de Boer at Crystal Palace.
No.
But then he wasn't given very much time either.
No. I think, and but it looks like Alan Pardew's coming in. He's not someone that's going to go and suddenly play expansive football. So I think West Brom fans are in for a bit of that be careful what you wish for syndrome of. I don't think it ain't going to get much better for the Baggies, unfortunately.
No, and this game away at Spurs was not an easy start, but a good performance by Gary Megson, and we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But I think with you, I don't think he should be given the job either, so I'm going with fiction.
Double fiction.
All right, let's move forward. Let's move forward because there is a whole host of Premier League fixtures this week, Tuesday and Wednesday. BT Sport are showing Watford Man United when they should be showing Brighton Crystal Palace.
They should be.
I do not understand. Why are they doing that, Dean?
Well, this is the thing. I was discussing this on my show the other week.
Quick little plug, come on.
Big plug. The Albion Mag radio show on 1BTN every Saturday at 11 a.m. It's part of your weekend build-up to the big games.
He's done that before, hasn't he?
No, I've never done that before.
He's done that before. Hi, I'm Dean. I host. Is that how you introduce yourself to people?
It's not, but I should do. I feel like that's how I should. Anyway, outside of Brighton and Crystal Palace fans, no one understands why this is a big derby that's got a massive rivalry, and obviously it dates back 40 and it's got all of that about it. But outside
Terry
of
Venables' fault.
No one really gets it, and I think that's why it doesn't get the main coverage. It does for the crowd, reactions, but not necessarily in terms of big games. And that's where TV planners, when they're not so aware, they go, oh, Manchester derby, Liverpool, they don't think.
Yeah, except whenever Birmingham faced Villa in
it's
whatever league, it is always on. It was on the other week. There was a really good programme, Premier League World. I think it was out on Sky. It's normally a global channel, a global programme for various different sports channels. And there was a really good 30-minute preview featuring, his name has just lost me. The main MC at the Comedia. It's going to kill me. He's been on the programme. Stephen...
Stephen.
2 comedians. Kevin Bridges being from Crystal Palace. if you're watching, Stephen, sorry. It's a really good preview, and it explains everything about the history of Crystal Palace and Brighton, and why they have the rivalry, and what it really all sparked off. It was between a game between Brighton and Crystal Palace in, I think it was an FA Cup replay at Chelsea, and it was a bit of a battle between the two managers, Venables at Crystal Palace, Alan Mullery at Brighton. They had a bit of a falling out when they were playing at Spurs. I think Mullery had been chosen as captain ahead of Venables. They disliked each other for a long time because of that. And I think right at the end, Alan Mullery threw some spare change on the ground and said, "Your club isn't even worth this change," or something along those lines. And ever since then, the rivalry has developed. And I think ever since Palace got promoted 5 years ago, that was in the playoffs. For me, Brighton were a brilliant side then, didn't go up, and you could see the rivalry there. It'll be the first time the two sides have played since then, and I think it's going to be a cracking game. Crystal Palace are in a lot of trouble, but they had a good win at the weekend. Brighton lost to Man United, except they played very well. But before we go into all of that, let's ask the question.
What is the question?
Brighton are favourites to beat Crystal Palace on Tuesday. Fact or fiction?
Fiction.
Ooh.
I think this has got the... sorry to say, if you're going to the Amex, it's got 0-0 draw written all over it. I think there's... Crystal Palace, I saw them play at Wembley a few weeks ago against Tottenham. I thought they set up really well. But they sit up to defend first and hit on the break using their pace. Brighton, as we're aware, will sit back, and they're not the sort of team that are going to go out and play to other teams' strengths. Like you saw at Old Trafford, they were very compact, didn't allow anything. I'm not saying they're going to play the same way against Crystal Palace, but they'll certainly... Chris Hughton is a very clever man. He knows their strengths, so he's not going to allow Crystal Palace that opportunity. So I think we're going to see two teams that are in a battle in that second tier or third tier, or however many leagues you want to create within the Premier League. They are in the same fight. I think there's only 8 points between them, considering Palace are bottom and Brighton are ninth. And I just see them nullifying each other. And I never predict a 0-0, but I think that's the score, yeah.
I don't think Brighton are favourites. I think the league position actually is overinflating Brighton's performances this season. I don't think they'll go down. Some people still think they're relegation candidates. Some people are like, oh, they're as good as Burnley and Watford. They're actually neither. West Ham are top of the top of the relegation zone at the moment. Between them and Brighton, 6 points. That really sums up where Brighton are. 2 wins for West Ham and the other teams. Brighton could be right in the trouble again. They have had too many draws recently at home. They should have beaten Everton. Yeah. And they should have beaten Stoke. I know Stoke were winning, but they were a much better team than Stoke. And when Stoke scored the first goal, Brighton had quite a few chances, Izquierdo in particular, with a curling effort, which on another day would have curled in. So those are the games which Brighton really should be getting results from and haven't been able to. With the way that Crystal Palace are kind of going up, with the fact that Brighton lost to Manchester United 1-0, I don't think Brighton are favourites. I've got a sneaky suspicion Palace will win, but I'm kind of with you. I think it's got a draw. I think it's got a 1-1 draw.
There you go. I never predict a 0-0. I just, for some reason, 2 teams are going to nullify each other. So we'll see.
I've got this feeling that Zaha's going to score. Zaha seems to always play well against Brighton.
Well, he did in the playoffs.
Exactly. Yes. So we'll have to wait and see. We can't see it because it's not on TV, because Watford Manchester United's on instead.
BT, if you're listening.
He's more aggressive than me, but you know what we're saying, BT. Let us know your thoughts. Brighton or Crystal Palace? We would love to get your predictions on fact or fiction. All right, let's move on, and we're going to go to Spain now. And we are going to talk about Barcelona drawing 1-1 with Valencia.
That's not the talking point, though.
That isn't the talking point. The talking point is, of course, about Messi's ghost goal, I think you'd call it. You compared it to Pedro Mendes.
Yes, Pedro Mendes famously at Old Trafford from the halfway line. It's about 6 foot. No, it was about 3 foot over the line. Roy Carroll claws it back out. No goal given. That was in the 91st minute. I was understandably gutted at the time. But this was almost as clearly over the line as that. And how the assistant referee referee, I can kind of, okay, if they're looking back, although you should be in a position because you should be angled enough to be able to see the whole goal. I'm trying to give the referee a bit of a benefit of doubt, but there's still, for the assistant referee or linesman, however we're going to call it, they look across. They can clearly see if a ball's gone over the line or not. So it's, in this day and age, particularly, when we're talking about adding in virtual reality refs for penalty decisions and whatnot, it's got to be, yes, fact, we need technology.
Let's
we
haven't asked the question
Sorry.
yet. You're one step ahead, Dean. But let's just, for those of you who haven't seen it, what happened was Lionel Messi had a shot from outside of the box. It hits the top. Did it hit the top of the bar?
It went through the keeper's.
Went through the keeper. So the keeper spilled it. The keeper dropped it. It went at least a foot over the line. Neto, the goalkeeper, clears it out. Play continues, and in fact, Valencia nearly go and score up the other end.
Did, yeah. Really broke the other end.
But there is no goal line technology in Spanish football. There's VAR in German football. The Premier League has goal line technology. Spain has none of that. And so that's what we're going to be talking about on today's Fact or Fiction. La Liga must use goal line technology by the start of next season. Fact or fiction? Well, Dean, you've pretty much given your answer, haven't you?
I'll say fact, I think. Fact for that one. I think if you're going to profess yourself as the best league in the world, then you must have everything that goes along with being the so-called best league in the world. And to not have the basics of technology that's available to improve your game, that's, this is a key game. This is first v second, 2 unbeaten teams. That decision could cost Barcelona the title come the end of the season. Could. I'm not saying it will, because Real Madrid are nowhere near the team they were last year to bring the fight. But you never know.
It's interesting that there isn't a firmer control by UEFA on the rules of all the top European leagues. It's funny because, as I mentioned, Germany's different to England, to Spain, to even the Champions League is different, where they have like 93 referees round every corner of the pitch.
Those ones behind the goal, what do they do? What do they do? They stand there and they've just got their little, and they never give any decision. I don't think I've ever seen them do anything.
I don't understand why they're there when they now have goal line technology in the Champions League. I know that Platini brought it in as we don't want technology yet. And so he brought them in, and then technology came in.
Was he getting a backhander for that one as well? Anyway.
These are the thoughts of Dean Kilford, not of Sportuccino. Remind us where we can hear your thoughts, Dean.
I'm just saying it's been tried, hasn't he?
I believe the word Dean is looking for is allegedly.
Allegedly, of course.
Michelle, you are always welcome on the show. I think we're going to move on from that, and we're going to leave football for the moment, and we're going to talk a little bit about cricket, because Australia won the first test against England in the Ashes. I think it was by 10 wickets.
It was.
So, Dean, England will lose the Ashes 5-0. Fact or fiction?
I think fiction. I can't see us losing 5, and I can't see it being a whitewash. Although the old England frailties came out, we were getting in a good position. By day 3, you didn't know which way it was going to go, and then we didn't learn from our first innings batting and gave away cheap wickets when we need to build and stand. And even if we're not going to win the game, stay in the game, prolong the innings, make it hard for Australia. And as you saw, the pitch was deteriorating, and by day 3, day 4, it was a batter's pitch. And this has all been said in the pre-game commentary, all been said during the game, that sort of by the end of day 3, day 4, and that's when England lost a lot of cheap wickets. So on the basis of that, England haven't learned, but I can't see us going. There was enough in the game for us to be positive about getting a result.
Well,
or some rain, hopefully. No.
Well, I haven't followed the first test, so I'm not really in the greatest position, but just due to patriotic hope, I'm going to say fiction anyway.
Good.
And I think we've covered nearly everything on Sportuccino today. It's been really good to have Dean. I really enjoy it, having someone in the studio. It's good to speak to a real person. No, my guests normally via Skype are real. They're not robots, but you can go back and watch them all at sportuccino.com, also on YouTube. And please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already, and like the Facebook page. Dean, before you go, you've already done one plug. Where else can we find you online, and what else are you up to at the moment?
So I've got the Terrapura non-league show and the Albion women's show, both on Latest TV. And you can see me if you're around in and around Brighton over Christmas. I'll be playing Buttons in Cinderella.
He's behind you.
Where? Yes, so that'll be it. So the Brighton Metropolitan Hotel, or Metropole Hotel. They've building a 750-seater state-of-the-art theatre. There's a winter wonderland there. It's going to be awesome. So get yourself down there.
Fantastic. And where can we find you on social media?
At Dean Kilford. Twitter, Facebook. What else is there? LinkedIn. Any of those things.
Snapchat?
At Dean Kilford. No, not yet. I should do that.
Well, it'll be across all the technology.
Yes.
Dean Kilford, just search Dean Kilford. Well, Dean, it's been really good to speak to you. It's been really good to get your opinions and your expert analysis. Thank you for being on Sportuccino today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for watching this programme. Don't forget, tonight in Brighton, if you're in the area, I am hosting a talk on how to interview famous sports stars. I do it every single week on the Best in the World with Richard Parr podcast, where I speak to Olympic and world champions. I'll also tell you how I speak to some of the amazing journalists and influencers such as Dean on Sportuccino. I'll be telling you not only how you can get these guests, but also what you should be asking them. And that is all tonight in Brighton. Tickets are £12 for students, £20 for adults. Please come along. There'll be a link to it on sportuccino.com. There'll also be some tickets on the door. So just come along and show up and say hi. Well, that's it for now. I'm Richard Parr. I'll be back next Monday at 11 GMT for another Fact or Fiction. We'll be having the expert broadcaster Johnny Gould. He'll be joining us live on Skype. Do not miss that programme. But until then, I hope you have a wonderful week. Goodbye for now.